Hi, welcome to the Get More Students podcast. I'm your co-host, Alex Asher, CEO of LearnCube.
And I'm Herbert Gozer, founder of herbertgozer.com.
And today we are focused on the 4 must-haves of a high-converting tutoring website. Basically, this is all going to be about websites and why it's, we all have a website. Certainly, Herbert and I really care about our websites and think that they're an important part of any business. But particularly it's because all of our customers in the end have to go through our website one way or another. One of the reasons that we felt that we could talk about this is since LearnCube, we specialize in helping online language schools and particularly tutoring businesses to grow with our virtual classroom and our online school solution. So we're constantly, before every meeting that we have with a prospect, we're going to be looking at their website, and it tells us a lot about them, and it also helps us suggest a fit. So that's just one example of a website being in practice, and it also means that we're really exposed to what tutoring companies and language companies are doing on their websites, because, as I say, this is something that we're doing every single week, every single day. And the funny thing is that a lot of websites are really the same, and are missing some really essential ingredients. And I think you'd agree on this, Herbert.
Absolutely. I mean, for our advertising agency, we run paid ad campaigns for language schools and tutoring companies every single day. And people forget how crucial the website is, because people go to the website after they click or after they see an ad. So we could be running the best ads, have the amazing creatives, the perfect audience. But if your website doesn't provide the information that the prospect is looking for, if it's too slow, if it's difficult to navigate, then you've lost the sale. So getting this right is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and we're really excited to talk about these 4 in particular. And why? Because we have our own websites, and we actually had a lot of fun just before this, even pulling apart our own websites. We've got some walks of shame on some aspects, but we've also got some things that we do really well. So it's been a really interesting conversation even leading up to this, and I think you're going to really enjoy what we have in store for you. So let's start again and really dig into that point. Why is a website important? Isn't it just a brochure and I just need to put information there and eventually people will find what they want, Herbert? Surely.
Right. That's what you think. Just put some photos, grab some photos off the internet, have a bunch of text about your service, and people will buy. I mean, that's the goal, right? But it really is so much more than that, especially these days. Your online presence and your website just need to be up to scratch, because your competitors are putting a lot of time and resources into building out their websites and increasing their online presence. So you have to keep up with them.
And we talk a lot about marketing as well, right? Around this idea of like traffic and flow. I mean, the 2 visuals that come up are like, a motorway or a river. But it's actually quite true when it comes to the website, because that's really the trunk of almost all of your marketing is kind of going to lead into that central trench at one stage. Absolutely. And I think it's really worth kind of keeping that in mind. And again, it sort of shows why even just small changes or small improvements can have a major impact on every other part of your advertising or marketing strategy. I mean, it's the core of what you do. And even if you're an in-person business only, I rarely would buy a product, even when I'm in a physical store, without quickly checking on my phone, a little bit about the about that company, which will probably be on a website.
Absolutely. Or finding out their reviews, what people are saying about this company. First impressions count.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best way to put it. Is it's hard you can't make a first impression twice. So that's one aspect, and the other aspect is simply relating to the SEO aspect as well, and the rankings and those sorts of things. So getting your website correctly laid out, I think, also has a big impact on the amount of leads that you get and the amount of people that come to your website in the first place.
Definitely.
So with that, keeping in mind that the website is really that anchor point, that core of what you do, it's really important. So what should every homepage have, Herbert?
Right. I mean, the first thing I guess is, when you open up a homepage, a website, you'll see a headline, and that headline should clearly explain in as little words as possible what you offer or what are people going to get from you.
Yeah.
And we had a look at some tutoring websites before this, and all of them have pretty good headlines. Something like the trusted way to find a tutor, or online tutoring that delivers results. So really focusing on the benefits and building trust, especially when it comes to finding a tutor for your child.
That's right. So that's the first thing, is having a headline. And I think that the second thing is there's almost always a sub-headline that kind of provides some context and some descriptive value to what that is. So sometimes that headline can be very kind of markety in terms of like trying to hit a pain point or trying to hit an aspiration, but somewhere it needs to kind of tell you what's on the tin. And so that's usually kind of very clear in the headline or very clear in the sub-headline. So those are the first two key things that a website or homepage in particular needs. Thirdly is the call to action. And so this is where you've got, in a SaaS website like LearnCube, where we're selling a virtual classroom online school, there's a try for free kind of. So that's our kind of key call to action. On your website, Herbert, what's your key call to action?
My kind of the next step is for people to book a strategy call with myself so we can discuss their marketing goals. So I have that button laid out multiple times throughout the website.
And I think most of the tutoring and sometimes some of the language schools that we see in terms of their websites, they're typically, find a tutor, or there's some kind of central action that you're trying to make as simple and fast as possible. Like, hey, you're in the right place. Don't worry, the tutors are here. But that's what we see fairly common across most of the tutoring websites, is that, or in a lot of language schools as well, actually, they use more like a free trial. And so, interestingly, I didn't see quite as many free trials in the tutoring space, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And there could be some really good reasons to that. But the idea is that there's a third thing, which is the call to action. Fourth thing is the imagery or the visuals. Do you want to tell us about that, Herbert? Like, why is that there?
Right. I mean, one, you want to build trust and show social proof that you are a real company with real students, real parents, having success stories, with their children. You have tutors, and what do those tutors look like? What's their background? And having these supporting images really builds on that.
And I think, just simply put, it's like, a picture tells 1,000 words, and it totally does. Like on a website, if you only had text, then that text would have to describe what it is, who you help, what it is you do, what's the result that you get. Whereas one image of a student or tutor or a virtual classroom or whatever that might be might give all of that information over in one glance. So that's why the fourth point is that supporting visual. What are the next aspects that are always in a homepage, Herbert?
I mean, listing out your features and your benefits. What are people actually getting from you, and having like a checklist of things that services that you provide and that people are buying, and of course, what are they getting out of it? Whether that be a better result for their grades, passing that test, improving their language skills, whatever that is.
Yeah. And they all have a good navigation system as well, is the other kind of aspect that a homepage comes. Now, you might be thinking, hey, that's a lot more than 4 points. Now, what we're going to do is say, hey, look, these are just the basic things. These are things that you can kind of find out about and aren't too difficult. And then we're going to drill more into like the 4 must-haves that I think give you a much better focus on what's important out of those items.
Sure.
Because the metrics are kind of an important thing to evaluate on what's a successful homepage and what's a successful website. In fact, we sort of dug some into the details, didn't we, Herbert? What were the kind of key metrics that really resonated with a successful homepage?
Right. Well, you want to have a look at your bounce rate. Now, the bounce rate is the percentage of people who leave your website without taking any further action. So they go to your homepage, abctutors.com, they look at it, and then they don't go to another website, web page, they don't fill in a form or click on a free trial or whatever. And, the idea is to get people to stay on your website as long as possible. I mean, the longer they stay on your website, obviously the higher the potential is that they convert into a free trial, into a customer. And so, having the points that we've already discussed, and of course the next four that we're going to drill into, will decrease that bounce rate. And so I think we had a look, and the average bounce rate for education websites is about 60%.
So just making that clear then, Herbert. So 60% of people will land on a homepage, basically, and then leave.
Correct.
Yeah. I think maybe a nuance might be they might click on any page. So for example, they go to a website, so they might land on a different page other than the homepage, right?
Right.
So theoretically, that could be a little bit different, but on average, we're talking 60% of people out of 1,000 people that come through here. 600 of those.
Yeah. I'm going to leave without doing anything.
400.
Yeah.
So anything you can do that reduces that bounce rate can have remarkable impacts on the total number of customers you have.
Absolutely. I mean, even single digit improvements can be huge.
And likewise, even talking about single digits, that's definitely where the conversion rates tend to hang out, isn't it, Herbert?
Definitely. And I mean, just speaking from experience and having a look at the conversion rates that we see for our clients, it kind of hovers anywhere between 1% to 2%. Now we're talking about a conversion being kind of any form of action that someone takes on the website. So usually that's filling in the contact form, booking a free trial, or actually registering for a course or some tutoring lessons. So we group that all together. And so, 1% to 2% is average. Obviously, anything above 2% is ideal.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you listen to those numbers, they don't seem particularly, they seem very small, but secondly, right, they seem very close, 1 or 2%, but they're different. 2% is twice as many as 1%. And I think we
double,
that.
Right?
So those
100% better performance.
Yeah, so it's the difference between out of every 100 customers that come to your website, if 60 of those 100 leave you, that leaves you 40. So if you've got a 1% conversion rate, is that of it's of all of them, right? So that's one out of 100 would convert versus 2. And if you multiply those numbers up into the thousands, those numbers can become really, really different. And one's a really great number and one's an unhappy number.
Yeah, can be very significant. So anything that you can do to improve your conversion rate by keeping people on your website, educating them, informing them, inspiring them.
And that brings us on to our 4 must-haves, because you can kind of probably split this out in lots of different ways, but there were 4 things that really stood out to us, particularly when we were observing all of these other tutoring companies and language companies, looking at our own. We also see the same things that we really need to have in every website. And the first one is having very clear, simple language. Number 1. It's also got to be written for humans, right? So this is one of the other things that I think is quite easy to mistake. Is you're like, how many keywords can I put into my headlines and my front page? And you kind of miss the point.
or how professional can I sound with a lot of technical words and jargon, and that can really defeat the purpose. And if you confuse people, that's something you don't want to do, is to confuse any of your prospects. So by keeping it casual and conversational, writing the way you speak, and a good kind of benchmark is to write your website text at an elementary school level. That level sees the highest conversion rates. And there's actually a tool that you can use to test the readability of your website for all the listeners. So if you go to webfx.com to tools and readability, then you'll be able to plug in your website and you'll get a score of how readable your website is. I think that's a fantastic tool.
That's great. So just that end bit is actually readable, read-able. But anyway, you'll find it there. But one of the things that's great about that is, I think you'd be quite surprised, particularly if you think about educators. Sometimes a lot of educators are like, I want to sound smart and sound clever. Sorry, exactly. Same thing on a website. People don't want to think.
You literally have like a few seconds to make an impression. And if you have this long block of text at the front of your web page, then people aren't going to read it. So having that clear headline, a very precise subheadline as well, it is a good place to start. And then you can have some more text at the bottom, maybe explaining the service or the programs or the courses, whatever.
Yeah. So one other tip though with that is do include your primary keywords in either the headline or subheadline in some way. But again, if you've only got seconds, you're not going to be able to put probably more than one or two keywords in there anyway. So be very deliberate about that, but don't let that get in the way of making it really easy for people to read and understand.
Yeah.
So, clear and simple language, number one. Number two really bleeds into that, which is to make it as easy as possible to navigate. That's number two. Make it as easy as possible to navigate. And why? Actually, HubSpot is one of the kind of most well-known marketing firms. They do a ton of kind of content marketing, but one of the things they also do is surveys. And 3/4 of the people that answered their survey on the homepage, like what was the number one thing? It was actually on easy to navigate, making it easy as to navigate. It's like, I think it was something like 75% thought, and it just absolutely blew all of the other things that they want out of the water. So it's really, really important. And that really, so that's why simple, clear language plus basically simple, clear navigation.
Exactly.
They're sort of hand in hand, but they make a big, big difference. What are your thoughts on navigation? Like, what does that tend to look like, even with like a tutoring company or an education company?
I mean, you don't. It depends on the company, but you don't really need that many, your buttons and fields and pages, for people to go to. You can have kind of sub pages, but people want to know what courses you offer. The price, maybe about you, so about the school, student testimonials, reviews, and things like that. Those seem to be kind of the key topics that people want to know about, and obviously how to sign up, perhaps how to register.
Yeah, so there's really like a hierarchy of needs. And I think particularly when you're setting up your navigation, you need to hit those in the right order. So there's no point in, people need to understand what you do before perhaps how exactly you do it with the details. Sure. Don't start with the how you do things necessarily, unless that's a bigger part of what you do or the what is so obvious. I think people get really confused when they have lots of different courses and lots of different varieties and lots of different ways that they can set it up. I think that's really a recipe for disaster, is when there's just far too much going on in terms of what you do, and it gets in the way of somebody making a choice.
Yeah, Uh, I mean, if you give people 100 choices, then they'll never make a decision, right? But if you, for example, showcase your best-selling product or your
Yeah.
hero product, the course or the program that everyone buys, then at least you're leading them in the right direction. And if that doesn't suit them, then possibly on that particular or that specific page, you can have some other options for them.
That's right. One of the other things when it comes to easy to navigate, and I notice this a lot with websites, is there's no real. It's particularly confusing when you arrive on a website where there's no clear priorities, no dominating text or
Right.
information to read. I arrive on the homepage and the headline and sub-headline look about the same size and they're the same
Mm,
color. And I don't know which
yeah.
one to read, and I don't have enough time to read both, so maybe I bail.
Mm,
Again, amazed how quickly people will bail on a website if they don't immediately see that it's right for them. And I think color can have a big impact too. Sometimes people have a really nice big bold headline in black, but then they might have like an absolute fluorescent red you know, sub-headline or something. And I'm going to be drawn to that because I'm probably going to prioritize my visual, the visual part of my brain by looking at color before even
exactly.
size. So you really need
Mm,
to think about the colors, the size of, and the size not just of the text, but maybe of the content blocks, and really make sure that it's really got that hierarchy in mind. Like, hey, they really need to understand that they're in the right place, and then this is the information you need to be able to make the next step, which is probably learning more about whichever kind of online tutoring service that you really offer is your number one. And then again, once they understand that, you don't want to start with price. Why would you want to start with price? You want to lead with value before you even start with price. But you need to have pricing often for people to be able to make a decision. So you can't make that hard for people to find. Or again, they
yeah.
might go to multiple pages and then bail anyway.
Mm. And I mean, on that, not being afraid of negative space, which can be your friend, white space. It can help you highlight different points. It can provide kind of a border between different sections. So don't think you need to fill up every single white space with text or photos and get the most out of your website because less is often more.
I mean, just listen. I just left a bit of a pause there just to show you what a big difference it makes when you do give somebody a breather, give somebody a chance to really listen in to that next point. And I think it's the same thing. It's the equivalent of the pause when you're speaking is that white space when you're on a website.
Yeah.
So we've talked about clear, simple language. We've talked about making things easy to navigate. The next point are the number 3 must-have is meaningful, real visuals. We said visuals rather than necessarily just images because videos can work incredibly well on home pages too, if they're done really well. And again, you would have to have the same. I would use all of the same techniques that we've here. The top must-haves you'd put in that video as well, right? Like, are you going to be making it really clear what you do and how you offer it in that video? Are you making it really easy to navigate, or it's very easy to understand, how your product and your pricing and your product is all put together? What else do you have in terms of meaningful, real visuals for us, Herbert?
I mean, I always say that I think in every single webinar or live Q&A or podcast, there's at one point where I say, please use authentic assets, photos and videos of real students, parents, tutors, because the parents want to see that you're actually teaching real students. They want to see other parents in their position, maybe struggling with their child's progress in a particular subject, and the transformation that that student went through before signing up for your tutoring service, during, and then afterwards. So Also tying in with a little bit of storytelling. I know we were speaking about this before, how powerful telling stories is, and you can do that through the visuals as well. And one other thing that is also quite effective and can be used very well is infographics. You don't necessarily have to have real photos of students and teachers and parents for everything, but showing a process, guiding people to the next step. An infographic can be an excellent way of doing that.
That's clever. One of the things, but saying that though, with your infographic, I wouldn't put that in the way of people. Like, education is a very and particularly if you think about tutoring, it is a very face-to-face. It doesn't mean it have to be in person, but it's very face-to-face. It's very human to human. And I think if you take that away and you only, for example, put infographics or you only put illustrations, it can really damage that sense of, well, I want, if it's a parent buying, I want my kid to have a tutor, and they need, and they may have like a vision of what that looks like in their mind. And you might need to test some of those images as well. So all of these things you can test, by the way, to be able to find what the actual sweet spot is for your particular target market. One of the other things I did want to just bring up, I was totally shocked at what a big difference real visuals would have. I mean, I thought, when you're talking about this before, Herbert, real images are important, but there was a survey that found that photos of real people outperform stock photos by 95%. And that is insane.
Incredible. Finally, I have something to back up my, I preach about this all the time, and finally I, have something to prove it.
I mean, does that match your own real sort of experience as well? I mean, you basically do advertising on behalf of language schools and education companies, like day to day. So this is the thing you're constantly experimenting with. And tell me about your experience then. Right.
So, I mean, we test everything, right? We don't only test authentic, real images and videos. And I know that some companies, some schools and tutoring agencies have a difficult time getting their hands on those authentic images. I know how difficult it is to get people to send in photos of themselves. So, we don't have any other choice but to, supplement with some stock images, and it can work. What we've been testing in the last couple of months is a little text in the photos, just to guide people and to call people out. So when they see that photo of a real student or of a teacher, but with that supporting text on the photo, they know, okay, this is for me. This is not just a whatever. A company selling, something I don't need. It's all about testing. And I know that I said previously, probably last year, don't use any text in photos. I know. But things change.
That's the point in testing, though, right?
That's the point in testing. It is a dynamic digital landscape, and what worked a year ago might not necessarily work today. So you've got to be on the ball and always be testing.
I love it. So keep those meaningful visuals. This was, by the way, a tip more for advertising than, say, for your homepage. On your homepage, but actually on your homepage, almost always, from what I've seen, that the text and the image are either one over the other or so close that they're like, hey, the text is backing up whatever the image is, or actually vice versa.
Sure.
Yeah. So we've talked about visuals. Now we're going to talk about the last key ingredient. Again, a thing that really excites Herbert, which is to add social proof. Herbert, this is you, mate.
Definitely. I mean, especially when it comes to tutoring, that is so important. If you're not able to build trust with parents, then who is behind this company? Who are the tutors that are going to be, in the classroom, handling my kids? then, you've lost that sale. So you've got to get those real testimonials from students and parents. You've got to put in accreditations that you have, so logos of any of those organizations or affiliations, and using third-party review platforms, also very effective, because sometimes posting a student testimonial or a parent testimonial, I mean, at the end of the day, you could have written that testimonial, but having, say, a Google site or a Trustpilot site that has hundreds of testimonials from real customers, there's no comparison to that. So,
yeah, and I think it's sort of like people kind of read between the lines, right? So when you write something on your webpage, people are like, yeah, that's your job. You should put it there for sure. But when they do look at a third party, like I did see one of the tutoring websites was really big on their Trustpilot, I think, star rating. And one of the reasons that is because it indicates that, hey, this is a thing I don't have any control over, and look how amazing this result is.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think it works really well. But either way, social proof sells. Totally. It's proven time and time again, and it's definitely proven in your own experience as well, if I'm not mistaken, Herbert.
Absolutely. Really big on social proof and leveraging any of those testimonials and assets that you have to build trust.
That's it. So if we want you to take away a couple of ideas, it's your homepage needs to convey two things incredibly well. A very clear message and trust. So when we were talking about it before, clarity in terms of your language, in terms of your navigation, and probably also that bleeds into the visuals, and then trust, which really does come from the visuals and particularly all of that social proof. And the fact that you can test all of these things and be open to change. I really appreciate that, Herbert. And by the way, I also picked a couple of things out of this, which I really enjoyed for LearnCube's website. I know that there's some areas for improvement, and we kind of talked about one, which was really like actually, we were talking more like the benefits and features and kind of making that a really clear difference between potentially the LearnCube virtual classroom and online school, and then say what Zoom or a kind of collection of other systems put together would be, and like making that a really clear distinction and making that very visual and really on the homepage, because that might be the number one thing that people are considering. And for you, Herbert, I had a couple of ideas. What was your number one takeaway when you looked at your own?
Yeah, I mean, I think my website might be is too text heavy. So maybe cutting back on the text, adding in some visuals, and perhaps even a video to succinctly explain my offering.
That's brilliant. I mean, actually, if you are interested as well, check out our website. As I say, definitely some areas to improve. Mine is www.learncube.com. And
mine is herbertgozer.com.
So thank you for listening in. We really appreciate you, taking the time and enjoying a bit of a conversation with Herbert and I on this podcast, on the Get More Students podcast. Our total goal is to give insights, inspiration, and motivation to tutoring companies and to language companies in order for them to get more students and grow their business. We release a new episode every week, so please subscribe to our podcast and you'll get a new shiny episode in your little podcast inbox every week. So see you next time.
Yeah, catch you in the next one.